A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. That point would be through chapter 25 in Pierce Brown's Dark Age. It's the first part of the... I guess it's the first half of the second part?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's how I would say it.
Or first third.
First part of the second part. Is what I initially started saying. But first few chapters of the second part of the book. So, with that, let's get going.
Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
This week in the Intoxicating Weekly Book Club, we learned that Daxo Telemanus has the same taste in spaceships as Jeff Bezos.
And Virginia likes a nightly bourbon just like we do.
Yep, that's true too.
So today is our fourth episode covering Dark Age by Pierce Brown, and we are going to tackle, as PJ so eloquently put in the intro, tackle chapters 18 through 25. First,
very eloquent, thank you.
Yeah, very eloquent. First, though, let's talk about what we're drinking. What are you having on this magnificent evening?
Oh, I tried something new today.
Ooh.
It is called a port lemonade. So it is an ounce and a half of port, ruby port specifically, ounce and a half of vodka, 3 ounces of lemon juice, and 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, shaken and served over ice. I did not have enough lemon to add a lemon wedge like I intended to, so the glass is naked, but I would have put a lemon wedge on it.
You friggin' leave it in glass naked. Who are you?
It's really good, man.
It sounds ridiculously
really
tasty.
Good. I think I'd go a little bit more simple syrup next time because it's pretty tart. It's delicious. It's really, really tasty. But following that up, I've got Tower Cloud from Equilibrium Brewing Company out of Middletown, New York. It is a Pilsner. It's 5.5%. It drinks almost like an Imperial Pilsner, though. Like, it's not super, super light like a lot of Pilsners are. It's got a little bit of heft to it in the body department. So I don't know. It's delicious. It's really good. So 2 high notes for my drinks tonight.
Yeah. Wow. Both those sound delicious.
Mm-hmm. What have you got?
I went a little bit simple today. I had originally planned to drink something that a couple of friends had brought me on their trip recently, but I decided that I'm going to hold that for next week. I've got a plan that'll require a couple more ingredients in order to pull off what I want to show that off. So tonight, what I'm having is a Tim Ferriss margarita. This is straight out of the 4-Hour Body in terms of what he considers acceptable slow carb drinks, whatever. It's just a really easy, simple thing to have kind of post-workout if you don't want to drink your calories. So all it is, 2 ounces of tequila, 1 ounce lime juice, freshly squeezed, some ice, and I add lime Spindrift to top. Spindrift is just a carbonated water, but they add a little bit of lime to it. So pretty straightforward.
It's more like a tequila spritzer, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there's no sugar.
Right. Lime technically is sugar.
Okay. A little bit.
Yeah, right. It is a very little bit, but yeah.
It is missing the simple syrup that would normally go into a margarita.
Correct. You definitely can add simple syrup. I just chose not to. And actually, I think that the regular list does include simple syrup.
Okay.
But I decided against that because I wanted something a little bit more refreshing. And it is delicious. It is refreshing. PJ, if you had to guess, if I'm drinking a weird margarita, what am I following it up with? If you just had to shoot in the dark.
Busch Light.
Ooh, that wasn't bad. It's like the beach party equivalent of a Busch Light, which
Is it like a Corona seltzer or something?
it's a White Claw, but it's close.
Okay, fair enough.
Just a natural lime White Claw to follow that. I just had a bunch left over in the fridge from the weekend, so I was like, you know what? I didn't want to drink.
Instead of the Spindrift, I would have put the lime White Claw in there.
I considered it for a second. Like, I actually stared at it and I was like, I could do that. And then I was like, that might be a little bit too much. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just drink that as my follow-up. It was that, like, the only other beer that I had in my fridge was an Imperial IPA, like a 9%er that was just going to kick my ass. And I was like, not tonight. Maybe on Thursday. But yeah, so that's what I'm drinking tonight. I had a shot of tequila right before the show. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, we've got a week of recording ahead of us.
Yeah, we do.
We've got this episode, which we're doing Monday. We're recording a Patreon show on Wednesday, and then we're recording our normal episode time. We're recording on Thursday. So,
yep,
Hell Week a little bit.
We're calling it a Hell Week of sorts, but it should be really, really great for those of you who are members of our Patreon or are looking to join this month on PJ Symposium. What are we covering?
Wrath of Man, the Guy Ritchie film.
Yeah, 2021.
Most recent Guy Ritchie film?
Yep, most recent one.
Okay.
He released The Gentleman technically in 2019, 2020. It was in December, so kind of hangover between the two. And then Wrath of Man came out in 2021.
So Jason Statham kind of heist flick, sort of?
I haven't watched it yet. That's what I have to do tomorrow, which is Tuesday,
All right.
and then we're going to talk about it on Wednesday. So
I am also going to watch it again tomorrow. So take notes this time.
but
that's a little bit different format. We've actually got another buddy joining us, so we'll have a little threesome on air.
Mm-hmm.
Be a good time.
Little threesome action. Jesus. All right. So yeah, that's going to be great. And then obviously we've got our regular episodes coming up, and we have discussed an additional book that we'll be covering, that we've already covered, actually, that we'll be releasing on the Patreon. More on that to come, of course. And with that, I'd like to get into last week's predictions, PJ, but there really isn't one to talk about, except for a very minor one here. Okay. So what happens to Lyria was addressed in a way, and you said...
I said we'll see an epilogue for her, but not a POV.
So...
That's still true.
It could be. So we're gonna hang on to that one, but I wanted to mention it because I wanted to make sure that it was still in the forefront of people's heads where we're at with kind of that prediction. But then the only other one that really has any kind of relevance is what's the structure of the next part, POV, timeline, and location changes. And you said
adding point of views, small time jump for Darrow and Lysander, multiple locations / planets.
Yes,
it is a small time jump from where we were listening, or where we were left off with Darrow and Lysander, but they were not featured in this part of the book. And we did add POVs, and they are on multiple planets. Yeah,
I'd like to add just a small clarification to your multiple locations planets comment. When you were doing it in the episode, you specifically said that like the battle would leave Mercury.
I did say that.
But I mean,
we don't know it didn't.
Right. So what I'm going to say is that I'm just going to give you the drink for adding POVs, because I think that's okay, right and well enough and good. And the rest of it has yet to be answered, within reason, okay. I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Simple enough. That's taken care of. Mm-hmm. So with that, let's get into the chapters. So I want to open up here talking about the quote that kicks off this chapter, because I think it's really fantastic. So part 2 of the book is called Craft, and it leads off with a quote from Julius Caesar here. It is easier to find men who will volunteer to die than those who are willing to endure pain and patience. I find this quote an interesting one right off the bat with the title Craft, it pointing kind of directly at something, PJ. Do you know what that something is?
Arts and crafts?
I swear to God. Why do we even create notes? I should just give you a crayon. You could take pictures of whatever you draw. I hate you.
Or spacecraft? I feel like there's is it Starcraft?
Statecraft, PJ. It would be statecraft, because this is all about politics.
I don't see how that's
and crafting states between Virginia
Kraft mac and cheese
and Ephraim. Okay. Moving on. Chapter 18. Virginia, sovereign. And I am so excited that in this book, the first time that I popped it open, and I definitely want to get your feelings, I was so fucking pumped to be all of a sudden in Virginia's heads. My eyes just lit up, and I was like, no fucking way. This is so perfect. What were your initial thoughts?
I loved it. I really loved the idea of it. I think that her point of view, especially in this book, being separated from Darrow for the most part, is incredibly important to have, because there's so many decisions that she's going to be making that affect and ripple out through like what Darrow's doing right now on the other side of the galaxy, or not galaxy, other side of the solar system. So having that high level view on what's going on, and above and beyond high level view of the political like machine, the actual leader of it, I think is super, super nice to have. So I'm excited. And it's Virginia, like Horsey Girl. We love Horsey Girl.
We definitely do love Horsey Girl, and I totally agree with you. I love the sort of sharp edge and like her mind right off the bat is so well orchestrated, and it's so funny because she's so snide on the inside, and you can kind of imagine that because she is the smartest person in the room. And I think what's so interesting about that is you kind of get flashes of the way that Nero was to other people and the way that the Jackal was to other people, Yeah. Like, and that's actually a part of her inner monologue in a way. I'm not saying she's evil or maniacal, but you can see kind of the family representation there.
There are roots. Exactly. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying that like having her as a point of view would be required to tell the story properly, but it's definitely important.
I also can't say enough about the very first like 2 lines of this chapter. I stare half-blinded into a firing squad of fly-eyed cameras. Out of the viewport behind me, battle stations and ships of war float beyond the upper atmosphere of Luna. I love the idea of cameras shooting, and it's obvious, but after transitioning from actual war to the war of politics is just so great. And that opening line sets that tone so well.
Yeah, it does. Sets it very, very well.
And then to follow that up, the speech that she gives is truly fucking brilliant. It's fantastic prose. It does a great job of not only catching us up on the public perception surrounding Darrow from the entirety of Iron Gold and kind of giving a sort of recap back to society, as well as the events that have happened since that we've experienced in the first part of this book, but it also backs him up and supports him as a leader. We've previously discussed and said that Darrow's been fairly neglectful of his immediate family in some rights and ways to satiate the Reaper's need to ensure society's survival. And here Mustang is backing him up 100%, regardless of whether or not he's there directly for her in the same way that she might need. She is there for him because she understands that this is for survival.
Right. Entirely. Yeah. I think another interesting point to bring up with this speech, this is the first, like, we're getting in Mustang's head, the first part of her point of view is her giving this speech, other than like the 1-page pre-preface, I guess, of this book. The first Red Rising, the very preface of that book, is Nero's speech to the Golds, where Darrow's in the army, or in the
Institute.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it the is it post, or is it pre-institute, or is it post-institute?
I forget exactly, but yeah.
But like, he's giving a speech, and that's the first we see of the man. And this, other than like that one little chunk at the beginning of this book, this is the first we see of her point of view. And I think that's the connections that we made like just now about sort of some similarities that we see in her. I think it's a fun tie-in.
Yeah, I think actually it's a great point to point out that both of them have speeches in the prefaces, and I think that is an interesting parallel that I didn't I didn't consider or think of, but they are both, I mean, statespeople. You know, they're both respectively various heads, and even in the middle of her speech and her internal monologue, she sort of admonishes him for his decisions to execute the girl, and in the place of his statue is one of the girl that he executed now. And there are all of these like tiny things that are just so brilliant from Virginia's perspective, and I totally agree with you. I love that they both come from that kind of like stately, I don't know, perspective or background. It's wonderful.
Right.
Great point. This speech also gives us a really full view of the Senate as it stands and where they sit on the negotiations for the upcoming vote that she is proposing here. And it really begins to show the tower of cards that Dancer has built, perhaps crumbling after this, or because of the speech's weight, and also the weight of Darrow's actions. What do you make of the sort of political house of cards that the Dancer's created?
Oh man, it's gonna fuck him. Like, obviously there's going to be collateral damage to when that house of cards falls, but I think it's mostly going to be him. Like, he's going to be the one that gets swallowed up by it. So I don't know.
Fair.
I don't know what to think of it entirely, but he's gonna screw himself, I think.
What'd you make of the? Oh, go ahead.
Beyond that, the speech itself, there's so much weight to it, like you said, and I know there's like cameras and stuff, but when I imagined it, like when I was trying to like imagine what it was like, I imagined almost like the what's it called, DC in front of, like, just a giant fucking speech in DC.
Oh, like State of the Union? Or
not the State of the Union, on the what's in front of the Lincoln Memorial? The reflection pool.
Yeah, the reflecting pool, the
what's
Washington,
that area called?
Oh, my brain wanted to say Palisade, but it's not that. It's the...
It has a specific name, and I know that's what I'm thinking of. But regardless, I'm thinking of a wide open
plaza.
Space with a shit ton of people.
Yeah.
No, not the plaza.
National Mall, called the National Mall.
Mall.
Yep.
Mall.
The National Mall. Yep.
So I'm thinking of the National Mall filled with people, and her giving this like really, really impassioned speech, and it's just a fucking room, and there's a bunch of cameras, and like the senators, I think.
Yeah, and reporters, I think. Like some senators and reporters. Yep.
Yeah, and like half of them are like cheering and super, super supportive, and half of them are just like staring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. I feel like that would be anticlimactic for her, even though it was broadcast to tons and tons and tons of people, millions, if not billions. But it's just in a room.
Yeah. I think that she says something along the lines shortly after the like I speech is that there's actually 8 billion people watching her at that point. So that's a huge amount of people. But also at the same time, by the time she ends the speech, she goes off and basically says, you know, that like everyone will slowly revert to normal, you know, maybe impassioned temporarily, but the goal here was to leave an indelible mark more on the senators as much as the people. And I think that it's all very cleverly and well positioned from Pierce's part, because it's so it's so easy to like fall and slip back in those habits, and you know take this moment of dire passion and desire and need, and then people just slip back into their daily lives without, you know, taking action to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to get sucked into that social media feed, you know?
Right. Exactly.
But I'm totally with you. I think that it's brilliant, and that you would assume that it is in front of this giant crowd atop the mall, and you'd hope that would be kind of the way that this gathering is. But
she's literally pounding her fist into the podium.
Yeah, right.
Like it just feels so grandiose.
And it is. I mean, all told, like that's the way that speeches are going to be kind of going forward for, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
we've kind of already talked a little bit about this, but there's a ton of modern political commentary tucked in here where you can see that Pierce was kind of seething from what I imagine was his opinion of the administration over the time period, and also specifically the bits of the speech that felt very directly inspired by Churchill that we'll get into a little bit more later. It's worth noting, I think, here for the people who don't know, of course, that Pierce did start out as a political consultant manager on campaigns while he was writing before quitting. That, I think, in particular, this little quote here called out to me as well as sort of some of that anguish that he has about modern day politics. We have let our union erode to tribalism. We hoard our wealth. We abandon our votes for violence. We summon tantrums instead of gritting our teeth in common purpose. And I think that like does really great justice not only for the current political climate, but also for what Virginia needs out of the people, the sort of ire against the society that they used to have, as opposed to sort of the decade of, conflict that they've had. But, feels like some people at the very least are potentially slipping back into comfort.
Right. Or at least stagnation.
Yeah. Especially when we get to the silvers and coppers later. But
I think your point about him being a political consultant before this, I didn't know that until just now. It makes total fucking sense. Like,
yeah,
he writes it so well, and his just the politics in general are so specifically well written. It's captivating and realistic at the same time, which seems like it'd be really tough to pull off.
Oh, for sure. I cannot agree more. I think that this is one of the oh, wow. This is one of the better parts of this secondary series that he really kind of gets to dive into a lot more with Virginia, with Ephraim, with Lyria, is sort of the political conversations around refugees and the political conversations of how do you deal with the post of a revolution. And I think that that's a fantastic entry point, which is great. And he gets to kind of comment on that and talk about it. So it's good.
Right.
And with that, the railgun blast of the twins of South Pacifica launching supplies across space, we end the chapter. I want to bring up a little thing here about the twins. They're named after Holiday and Trig, but Holiday and Trig aren't twins, according to the books. So,
see, we talked about this because I thought they were.
This is where, if you remember correctly, and this is why I want to bring it up here, if you remember the conversation that we had with Aaron and Ben, they also thought, or I think Aaron also thought that they were twins, and I think it's also because of this in Dark Age that it like re-triggers in everyone's head and makes you kind of like think that they are twins. But I actually had our little squad of Discord folks go peel through the Morningstar for me just to confirm my own suspicions, and it is in fact that Trig is a younger brother.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why, because I hadn't read this book at that point, and I remember them being like introduced as twins, and then I don't know, didn't put much thought behind it beyond that.
Totally. It's interesting. But I mean, still, they're still siblings, right? Siblings of South Pacifica doesn't quite have the ring of the twins of the South Pacifica as a pair of railguns. So,
well, maybe the railguns themselves are the twins and they're named after the siblings.
Right. That's likely the case. Something to that effect.
Probably identical railguns.
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. I love the sort of mental image that I get.
Like a year younger than the other.
I love the mental image that I get of the railguns firing, though. Like just the idea of like these giant cannons pointing up at the sky and launching all of these supplies across space is just a fantastic visual image.
Man, they've got to be so well packaged. Railguns are so violent. Well, it's so much acceleration. I don't know. They'd have to be entirely encased. No, man, railgun rounds get very, very hot too. Very, very hot. So it'd have to be some sort of like really thick pieces of metal encasing whatever the supplies are with a decent amount of like thermal shielding on the inside.
Yeah, right. In order to make it work.
Yeah. I just want to see that. I think it'd be fun.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. With that, we get into chapter 19, Virginia, Stiletto. I really enjoy the way that like Virginia describes Holiday here for us. It's so different because we've seen Holiday from Ephraim's perspective. We've seen Holiday from Lyria's perspective. We've seen Holiday from Darrow's perspective. And now we add Virginia to that mix, right? And the description is just a little bit different. And I think that that's such a nice touch on his part to kind of use and think about the way that Virginia would think about people. And for her, she adores Holiday and loves her in a number of ways, but she also thinks of her as an instrument because that's her utility, as a scalpel to get at the heart of what needs to be done. I love that.
Yeah, it's a great way to describe her. Even when she's not acting on Darrow's behalf or really not taking direct orders, her actions and decisions are really, really careful. And I don't know, her reputation and the Howlers' reputation in general they bring weight to whatever scenario they're in, whatever situation they're in. And she wields it like a weapon really, really effectively. Like, think about when she walked into that bar to meet Ephraim early on in Iron Gold. Like, she commanded that room instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the wolf cloak had something to do with it, but she's imposing, she's confident, and she does it on purpose.
And even without that, like, her reputation precedes her in a number of ways, right? Like, Roan T. Flavinius is the only one, Lysander's little dog, is the only one who is more notable than she is, and then Trig was, as far as Greys go. So those are high marks before she was even a Howler. And you throw all of that together and you get the description from everyone. Lyria not really fully understanding the wolf cloak, but not knowing the rest. Like you said, Ephraim in that scene in the bar, kind of that intimidation that rolls off the shoulder. All of those different moments are just so fantastic as far as building up this sort of, I don't know, mythical warrior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even throughout the section, I didn't write this down anywhere, but like the fact that she like uses a finger gun and like snipes at someone at some point, like there's just so many different delicious moments with Holiday that I love.
Speaking of this though, just because it's popping into my head, Darrow has collected some of the like most notable instances of every single color, basically, right?
Yeah, pretty
much. Not
much.
every single one, but a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, like no whites. Really, but
no whites, not really any super like notorious pinks.
Theodora,
she is a rose, but it's not like her name brings any necessary weight. Like what's the orange that he's got?
Harnassus
now. Harnassus or Holiday, or I guess he's like the most famous red at this point.
Orion. There's a
Orion,
ton.
The blue, yeah.
Callaway as well.
Yep. Yeah. It feels like he is sort of not creating, but collecting the powerful colors.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that even you use that word, because that was one that was used by Darrow to describe Octavia and how she collected people back in Golden Sun.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
But it's apt, and it totally makes sense. And in the same way, I think that Virginia does collect people in the same kind of capacity. And, who'd she learn that from? There's, I think that Virginia likely places a higher value on people than Octavia does, of course, based on her, moral standing. But in a very similar way, kind of seems that way.
Right.
I love the explanation in the namesake of this chapter as well. Selenius's stiletto. I think that this concept is super important, is largely also the same reason that Darrow's never gone so far as to seize power, as it would kind of be this act of tyranny, and it was the same sort of stiletto that Selenius was walking on. I think this is a nice little thing to track how they're going to pull off the political machinations over kind of the rest of the book, or kind of setting it up to appear as though they've got to walk this very thin line.
Mm-hmm. The idea of threading the needle between like two bad outcomes or two like straight up catastrophic outcomes makes for some really, really interesting storytelling. So I'm excited for that sort of idea, I guess. Beyond that, though, I think this is kind of a step up in stakes between like where they're at and Selenius. Because Selenius was like the one that conquered Earth, right? Effectively.
Yeah, the society
Or is
was
it
mostly
beyond-
out
does
in
he
the
go beyond that?
stars. So the only planet that he really had to fight against was Earth because the stars were all a part of the society. So,
Okay.
but your
So-
point stands, I think.
Yeah, like they're they're trying to unify the solar system. They're trying to fight the solar system, which is way, way bigger scale.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Totally. I love that comparison, and I think that you bring up a really great point thinking about the sort of change. And I love the fact that Holiday and Virginia are obviously talking about this right now, and sort of the kind of joke between the two of them when like, oh, well, when the Sovereign hands you a book, you definitely read it. When Virginia hands you a book, you read it. And the fact that they also acknowledge that, yeah, while I don't agree with Selenius on a number of things, I can still take his wisdom and knowledge and apply it to, my own situation. I find both of those things very kind of admirable between our pair of characters.
Yeah. I think that's an important trait to have. To look at the horrible, horrible people in the past and be able to approach it without the emotion blinding you of what they actually accomplished, and be able to take their process and apply it towards something good. I think that's an incredibly important thing to learn to do. You can condemn them for what they've done and how they wielded that knowledge and that power, but to be able to take it and use it for something good, I think is almost more important than ignoring it.
Totally. Yeah. I'm all over that with you. And I think that is, it's just such a strong point. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about meditations in a second here, but Marcus Aurelius was leave me alone. Marcus Aurelius, like, and a number of other folks within the political and the sphere of the time in Stoicism, in just about every single actual philosophical movement, were for the most part not great people. And so it shouldn't come as I guess I'll just bounce back to my Marcus Aurelius comparison. So Marcus Aurelius was notable for, at the time, before Christianity was what it was, he went on a crusade against Christianity and was purging and killed hundreds of thousands, millions of Christians in a purge, and then also like struck out against Gaul and was obviously a conqueror in the first place. And so there are all of those different connotations. That's not to say that there isn't a bevy of things that can be learned from what he did, what he chose, and how he behaved. The same could be said for, Attila the Hun and sort of the way that he approaches tactics, or Sun Tzu in general. There are a lot of people who have questionable paths that are at the very least occasionally worth remarking upon. Mm-hmm. Speaking of one such individual, did you have another thought? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope.
Okay, we're going to talk about it more, so it's not like it's going away.
Yeah, I figured.
In the argument with Dancer, I found it particularly poignant, and to like call out that he called out who inspired the speech of the last chapter, and that is of Churchill. And it fits into exactly what I was just saying. In many ways, it shares a lot of the same rhetorical devices that Churchill applied and used over his career, but it reminds me most of the "We shall fight on the beaches" speech, which was just post Dunkirk and pre sort of the turning of the war. It's his like turn of the war speech. And wow, I mean, just what I actually reread it a day ago or so, but when I was doing some of the notes here, and I was kind of fascinated by the comparisons between the two. So I really, really appreciated him obviously calling that out. And then Virginia, of course, being like, if it's been done before, why would I redo it?
Exactly. I think this is another great example then of Piercy Boy's political background and how it creates really a cool dynamic when it's paired with his just really, really top-notch writing. So that's cool. That's cool to see. Mm-hmm. But in this little section, there is a quote that says, "You and I both know Darrow and the Reaper are two different things entirely," from Dancer to Mustang. Was that a part that like, was that something that you remembered and like just kind of kept from me when we were talking about this, or did it kind of fall through the memory cracks when we were discussing the Darrow versus the Reaper and if they're two different entities. Or do you think it doesn't really play into it at all?
So what I would say, PJ, here is that this was actually explicit in the very beginning of Iron Gold. So I think it's the chapter after the fantasy in which Darrow and Dancer go on the walk through the forest, and he brings it up and broaches that subject with Darrow, and kind of points to the fact that there are two different, excuse the shitty reference, but there are two different wolves inside of him. And fuck. But like in all actuality, it's especially funny because he's a Howler, so that's an even better joke. But this was brought up by Dancer back in Iron Gold, and now he's just kind of reiterating it in case we forgot, I think, more than anything else. This is just to point back to that, to make us think about it and make us kind of remember it. And I think that I did not remember that he is so explicit again here when I was thinking back on it. But we provided in Iron Gold, I think we provided so much more detail and depth and thought as to why we believe or kind of agreed with Dancer.
Mm-hmm. Without actually pointing out that we were agreeing with Dancer.
No, I pointed out at least once or twice back to that chapter.
Did
but
you?
Yeah,
okay, I don't
totally
remember
did.
that at all.
It's okay. Yeah, I definitely did in our wrap up episode with Hail Reaper for sure. But
okay, yeah.
I think I think it's a huge point, and I think that it's especially important to acknowledge this because it's not. Pierce is actively acknowledging that other people within the universe also think like we do in this way, that there are two different people there.
Okay. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Right. So I think that it's an important thing to kind of point out. And then I think that it's important that we delved even deeper than, kind of the sort of surface level comparison. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Churchill?
Cool dude.
Dude likes cigars. Yeah.
He likes cigars.
He did.
That's,
pocket watches. What do you make of the situation of the Republic fleets? And do you think that like Mustang's political decisions here are kind of on the right page to go after the different voting blocks and ensure this? Or do you think that maybe she should consider, like, she's walking Stellenius's stiletto. Do you think that she's walking in the right part of it? Do you think that she should be seizing more power? What do you think would be the right move?
Honestly, I trust her. I trust her entirely. I think she's right when she says that she's the smartest person in the room and in the universe. And you know what? I'm going to go along with whatever she decides because I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to trust that she's smarter than I am and just go with it.
Fair enough. That's great. I love that. I love Virginia. I love her perspective so much. It's so good. All right. Also, for the record, we didn't like pull any immediate quotes out of these sections. This entire fucking like Virginia is so well written in these early chapters and expository. All of it is good. All of it is easy to like pull out and be like, this is a delicious quote that like, yeah, like my God.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best writing.
It's great.
Chapter 20, Virginia, Politicos. The flying testicle ship. Do I have to say more? Like it's pair of balls, the skyhooker balls.
She talks about the aesthetics.
You just got to wonder if they're hairy or not, right? Like, are they shaved?
They're just wrinkly. I'm assuming they're wrinkly, and I have a reason for that. There's an absolute reason for that because she says that it was designed to look like a brain.
They definitely have wrinkles. It's like a peanut brain, like if anything. Oh my God, that's fucked.
Daxo Bezos right there.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, it's so good.
I'm going to try to... Okay, so moving on. The sort of hustle and bustle around a vote feels very similar to what we might have seen before the battle in a previous chapter from Lysander or Darrow's perspective. And I think that comparison is very intentional on Pierce's part to show that every war is really a conflict on so many more fronts than just the one where the blood is drawn. You know, there's blood drawn in these back rooms. This is the room where it happened. The room where it happened. All right. Anyway.
Yeah. I think that with Mustang's point of view, we get to see this a lot more because she's at the epicenter of everything, but also because she seems to think in such a high level that she can kind of juggle all of it at once and keep it organized. And I'm noticing more and more with this book, every point of view, he's actually kind of editing his voice. Like he is writing in the voice of those characters as opposed to just in his own sort of writing style and like about the characters. Oh, that seems like a subtle distinction, but it seems so much more well done in this book than the previous one. And I think having that sort of mindset with Virginia, just being able to handle that juggling and the hustle and bustle, as you say, is really easy to translate then.
Yeah, it's
kind of cool.
It's fantastic. I really appreciate the, like you said, there's very much kind of that translation, that voice, making sure that carries over and isn't lost between these sort of different characters and their distinctive personalities. But I also love, at the same time, the sort of difference between the sort of pre-war moments, right? The sort of like setup of like getting your armor on and getting all this, and in the political atmosphere, it's like getting your stims lined up so that you can stay up for your 16-hour whatever phone conferences and calls and whatever else, and like getting all of the language right and like all these specific things that just feel like they're also extracted from Pierce's life working inside that political sphere, but make a ton of sense in context to the comparison between the two characters, between Darrow and Virginia.
Right.
I really enjoy the dive that Virginia takes into the balls of this thing, you know?
Down the 200-meter shaft.
Oh my God. My brain skipped over that because I was still back on the balls description. Woof. But the Gigavoc are pretty interesting. I actually kind of had trouble picturing them the first time, and so I actually looked up a couple of the words that I obviously didn't understand. But cartilaginous, deep sea predators, which, if you don't know, folks like me, that is like sharks and stingrays. A lot of sharks and stingrays are cartilaginous, meaning that they're mostly cartilage.
Floopy, boneless dudes.
Loopy, floopy, boneless dudes. What the fuck? Okay.
So I imagine them as like sort of exaggerated bullhead sharks.
Okay.
So they're, I don't know, almost teardrop shaped, and I imagine like their face is a little bit flatter and their mouth is a little bit wider and just kind of, I don't know. It says 1 meter long. If they haven't been activated by cannibalism, I guess.
Sure.
So that's kind of how I imagined it.
Activated by cannibalism. True, but like,
their gland, whatever the gland is,
right?
They literally use the word activated.
No, I'm with you. I'm pretty sure that's totally correct. All that I'm saying is like, it's just so funny that like they're activated by that cannibalism. Like I don't know, the whole like description of the ecosystem of a Gigavoc and the way that they function and kind of fight against each other, I thought was fascinating. Thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, super cool. And he just feeds like assassins to them.
Right, exactly. It's a perfect way to dispose of people. Clap, wipe your hands, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Way better than pigs.
Yeah, I've ran out of barrels for people, so
right,
and space for barrels of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I only had space for 4, and I'm out.
Do something about that.
Should I drop them in the marsh? There's lots of marsh.
Well. All right, let's cut this from the episode. All right, so Crossland, now that we're off the record, so you got to go into the swamp.
Yes.
As far as you can.
Okay.
Until you're at least like mid-thigh deep, and you need like several cinder blocks. You can't just get away with 1 or 2. You need like 3 or 4 per body.
Okay. What about the gators?
All right. Shit, you're in a gator place. That actually makes it easier. You need probably some more protection for yourself. Though if you have like little pieces of body as bait that you can like throw away from you, that's probably good.
Do I need like a big like barge with a giant fan on the back to push me around the swamp? I feel like that's required.
I mean, for style.
Style? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You're right. I think Johnny Quest is one of those, so it's really important that I'm like as cool as Johnny Quest.
You're never going to be as cool, but you can approach it.
What?
Anyway, let's get back to the show.
Oh, shit. Yeah, right.
Wrap this back up.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
We'll just seamlessly edit that together.
It
sounds like we didn't do this.
Yeah, we can talk about that off air.
No incriminating things here.
Right. Exactly. Yep. What do you make of Daxo's conversation with Publius Q. Caraval?
Man, I just like the sort of commentary it makes on our own government in general. Like, it's clear that all of this, like, chunk, all of the political conversations that are going on are completely influenced by, like, modern U.S. politics. So, I don't know. I made that note. I don't even remember exactly what they were talking about at that point.
There's just so much good stuff that passes between the two of them as they're like having this conversation, and I think that there's a lesson that I learned from an author this summer called status play, and it's basically who's like holding, like if you think about it like a basketball game, it's who's holding the ball, who's holding the power, and something that another character says can pull the ball from their hands, and so then they have the ball. And I think that this is a brilliant example of status play between the two of them, where they're kind of pulling it and pushing and pulling it away from themselves or back towards themselves as they continue down the conversation. It's interesting because they're also both, generally considered good characters, right? Like Publius is the incorruptible, and Daxo is Daxo.
Incorrigible, right?
Incorruptible, I believe, as well. I think he had like three nicknames.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
They only bring one of them up in this section. I think it's incorrigible.
I think they trioed them at one point, but that might have been later with Quicksilver. But
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Regardless, I think that it is fantastically done.
And just Mustang walking out of the wall of water.
Yeah, like, excuse me. It's a great moment. I appreciate this line in particular, of course. Fascism is a scourge. Sometimes we must sacrifice to destroy it. And I think that this is kind of, obviously, it's an important point as far as justification goes towards the destruction of the society remnant. And I'm glad that it was made into such simple terms here by Publius. What do you think of his and Virginia's stance on the moral quandary of the war? We'd kind of discussed it previously, like, is it the right thing to like be killing all these people, doing it this way? And we really discussed it back in Iron Gold with kind of the murders of a lot of like low colors that maybe, I don't know, previous Darrow might have felt differently about. What do you think?
So it seemed like there was a lot of tension in that conversation, clearly. But it also seemed like they were kind of on the same page the entire time. To a certain extent, like they both understand that they're in this position where even if there are significant casualties, it would pale in comparison to the deaths that would be sustained by like not going to these lengths to try to finish the war. I don't know. Like you said, sacrifices need to be made to quash fascism. And those sacrifices are going to be innocent people, and millions of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think you're so on the nose there, PJ. That's perfect. I love it. Good work. Good stuff.
I don't know if it's that great of a read. I think that's explicitly what he's saying.
Well, I know, but like I think that like there's, because he is this incorruptible force, like there's nothing more to read from him. He's direct. He's not playing at anything,
Right.
There's
exactly
nothing else to peel back but the honesty. So, yeah.
And if the incorruptible is okay with these, not okay with, but is accepting of these casualties and these sacrifices, it kind of goes to show that they're kind of on the right path.
Definitely, without a doubt. And that's exactly, I think, how that shakes out for the group of them. And I think that truth be told, I think that Virginia probably tosses it back and forth more and thinks that, than Publius probably does. Like thinking about the sort of casualties and whatnot. Likely because her husband's also the one doing it, but...
Yeah, that's true.
So we've spoken about Cassandra before, the Trojan seeress, all the way back in episode 8 of Iron Gold, originally brought up by Alexander around Verona and Darrow. In case you don't remember, seeress that was flagrantly disregarded back in the Trojan War.
Seeress?
So, like a person of prophecy, like that seeing into the future. So,
but a woman, not just a seer.
Correct, a seer. Yeah,
it's gotta be separate named seeress, which is just it looks dumb on paper, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I typed that out. I don't know. It's just me, but. I think that it's interesting to see her come back here now, mentioned in the story, and it fits in, I think, into the story a bit more neatly than it did the first time that we kind of talked through it, as Daxo refers to it as Cassandra syndrome, as he refers to Publius's position in the conversation.
Yeah, Publius is such an interesting character, and more than anything, I'm glad we're getting a more in-depth conversation with and about him. Just being staunch in his refusal to take part in any sort of corruption or like anything immoral within the government. It's interesting and refreshing, but it's also kind of sad in his nobility because he kind of becomes an outsider to the rest of the Senate at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, or am I like reading that completely wrong? It seemed like he was just kind of the lone wolf off to the side.
I think he's still the leader of the copper block, all told. As much as, well, here's the interesting tidbit, right? Like Virginia speaks about this a little bit earlier, but she's like, I predicted that we would move on from colorism into planetary tribalism, right? And so the blocks have kind of fractured a little bit more around the planets than they are grouped around the colors. But I think that he still holds a decent grip over the rest of the coppers based on what we're given inside of this chapter. So,
okay.
But they're kind of, I don't want to, like, homeless isn't the right word, but they're more fluid between the blocks, it seems. They're not associated with either of the two major parties, the Optimate or the Vox Populi.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. But like that's just kind of what I got off of the Cassandra syndrome line, like being sort of an outsider that he's not going to be paid attention to as much and not going to be like heated.
I agree with you. I think one of the interesting components here that fits in as well is that they're also trying to court Publius, and so like insulting him is a weird move, right? Like, I mean, not exactly insulting him, but kind of like Daxo talking down to him is an interesting political move, and it feels like one between friends in a way. You know? It
does feel like one between friends, and it also feels like Daxo doesn't necessarily know how to do anything but talk down to somebody.
That's a fair point. Virginia's pretty explicit about that too, so that's a good point. Oh, God. Fair. I also think that fits in here. So I also love the banter that happens after this moment, of course, between Virginia and Daxo, and how Daxo is just such an intellectual prick that he stands above everyone else, despite all of like his other familial traits that are associated with the Telemanus family. Like, he is kind of nice. He's got a lot of the other sort of like warm things going on. Obviously, he's noted, like, he saved Virginia's life as a child, which is a huge deal, despite them not really interacting until that point. Kind of like he's earned Virginia has earned their friendship and is like actually his only friend. The fucking line that got me this time is when Virginia points out that he was modeling himself after Lucifer from Milton's Paradise Lost, and he's like, fucking finally someone figured it out. Like, he's got that like sort of dreaded self-loathing that Lucifer has in that. And I love that little back and forth exchange between the two of them and sort of the consistent wit.
I should probably read Paradise Lost, huh?
I mean, like, The number of references that Pierce makes to Paradise Lost is a little
Everybody
nutty.
makes references to Paradise Lost.
It's like one of 3 that like I think most people should read once they are readers. I don't think you should hand it to like a 16-year-old and be like, hey, try to read this, because I don't think you'll get anything out of it. But like Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost.
One of my favorite bands has a song about Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
I still haven't fucking read it.
I mean, yeah. Right. You should probably
Is
read
it just called Paradise Lost?
Yeah, it's just Paradise
I think
Lost
so.
by Milton,
Yeah.
John Milton.
But no, the used song.
Oh yeah,
I think it's just called Paradise Lost.
Well, that whole record, PJ, is all like almost all the titles of those songs are after classical literature books, like
Gotcha.
Gravity's Rainbow. God, what the fuck is the other? They're like 4. Obviously, like it opens up with Paradise Lost, a poem by John Milton. I am so.
It's the only song I really like on the album. Anyway,
well, leave me alone. It's my favorite album of theirs because it's all fucking literature references.
It's weird to
aplenty.
me.
Yeah,
it's weird to me that you like it that much, but I guess it makes more sense now.
1984, The Infinite Jest, the Lottery, of course. And Darkness Bleeds. So, I mean, there are a lot of like classical literature references. Basically, what this is just this totally random tangent here, folks.
Welcome to Hard Pan.
Yeah, welcome to Hard Pan for 4 seconds. The Used, Burt McCracken had a very serious drug problem, and what he did to kind of cut cold turkey, to like cut out of his drug problem, is he replaced it with reading. And so he chews through books and literature like it's nothing now. And that's how he just has chosen to replace that fixation. So he often in the last 5 or 6 years quotes little tiny sections in lyrics. So
that makes sense.
Anyway, that's your little dose of Hard Pan. The Used and Paradise Lost. How do you feel about Virginia and Daxo's relationship, though? Like,
just in general?
Yeah. What do you think of it?
It seems, I don't know. It's hard to say. It doesn't seem necessarily like super friendly, but it doesn't seem business only either. I don't know. I don't know what I think of it. It's in a weird spot. I think it's a good relationship at this point. There are disagreements. It's healthy. I think it's a healthy relationship.
Okay. They
can push against each other without worrying about the other overreading it or anything like that. It seems like they'd be... Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. I think that you're
I can't put it to words properly.
Like they've got a proper friendship, but it's also like driven out of work, and I don't know. There are components that are all over the place with their friendship. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, of course, to go back to the point that like Dax's only friend is Virginia. Like,
yeah.
And he's like, I'm just picky with friends. And it's like, well, you picked one friend. It's a great moment. It's a great moment. We move from that conversation, of course, to a mantra that they recite constantly together, apparently. And it is one that I said felt torn straight out of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations in the sort of early chapters in the early books of Meditations. And upon Googling, you know what you find when you Google that little quote there that they have in the book? You find Dark Age. You find Dark Age quotes. You know what it actually is? That quote that I recognized immediately was actually something straight out of Book 5 of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So the only thing that is added is the very last line, that fourth line, but directly from Book 5, page 61 of the Gregory Hayes translation, if you care. Book 5, point 24, matter, how tiny your share of it, time, how brief and fleeting your allotment of it, fate, how small a role you play in it. And then 26, I think, kind of feeds into this a little bit. The mind is the ruler of the soul. It should remain unstirred by the agitations of flesh, gentle and violent ones alike, not mingling with them, but fencing itself off and keeping those feelings in their place. When they make their way into your thoughts through the sympathetic connection between your mind and body, don't try to resist the sensation. The sensation is natural, but don't let the mind start with the judgments calling it good or bad. And that actually feels like a summation to me of the fourth line that Pierce gives. So
okay. So this like Marcus Aurelius guy, he's like an author or something.
I fucking hate you. Hi. Are you? Yeah. It's worth noting. I don't know if I've actually said this on the show before, but the meditations of Marcus Aurelius were originally just a diary. They were only ever intended to be a diary, and then someone found them, translated them, and published them. So they were never intended to be public. These were all internal moments for him to reflect on his own life and how he wanted to behave and change and act. Worth noting.
Gotcha. I think you did mention that at one point.
I talk about meditations enough where I would not be shocked if I've mentioned it like 8 times.
Yeah, you talk about it way too fucking often.
Leave me alone. And then we cut to them moving the political machine of which Virginia absolutely adores being a part of, as she kind of smiles, saying that she absolutely loves this at the end of the chapter. And
yeah, it's so good. I don't know if I'm saying this enough here. I love these chapters with Virginia. Mm-hmm. They are so interesting, so well written, just different. I love it. Super into it.
You know, we haven't talked about this for a while, but did you ever think we'd get here from the original Red Rising book?
No, it seems so like daunting and so far off.
Yeah, like this doesn't feel like the original town at all, right? But it still is in the world.
Oh, I thought you meant like I figured I would get way too busy to be able to continue this. Like, I figured we would get too busy throughout the year and like it would peter out. I'm so happy that we've gotten to this book. It just felt like such a daunting, far off thing when you posted like our schedule initially internally. You're like, all right, so here's our schedule through like August of 2021. Yeah. I'm like, oh,
we started. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's a lot.
Yep.
But just the progression of the quality of writing has been really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think
it feels like an entirely different writer between the first book and here.
Well, and the world just becomes so much larger with each and every single book. It's insane the amount of depth that gets poured into these things. It's just bonkers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the first book is one world, and it starts off with like the underground of one world. So
yeah.
Like it grows quickly, but aggressively.
Yeah, it almost feels exponential, but maybe it's logarithmic.
Could be linear.
I guess it could be linear.
No, it'd be logarithmic.
Yeah, I think so. So with that, we move on from Virginia. We'll come back to her right at the end here this week, but we're going to move into Ephraim with the chapter Mauler, Brawler, Legacy Hauler. And we're back with Ephraim T. Horn after a nice 200-ish page vacation away from the man who numbs himself up to get away from life. And we back. It's so nice. It's so interesting. It's so fun to be back with Ephraim.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yeah. It feels home.
It does. It's so like weird and warm. I love Ephraim so much. I love the way that this chapter also starts off with these like staccato, panicked language from Ephraim inside of his head, the italics. It gives us this like real feeling as though he's dying, but scrambling to stay alive and do what he needs to. The shift in font, too, from the bold as the computer calls out for the queen. Like I said, the italics for him is such a wonderful stylistic choice. And then later when he starts to recover a little bit and going back, and there's just all of these different excellent choices to pull off this chapter here that I adore.
Mm-hmm. The start of this chapter is really when I consciously started thinking about the differences in voice that Pierce was putting towards the writing. It is so different and so unique, so distinct from Mustang and from Darrow's point of view and from Lysander's point of view for that matter. But this point here, like the beginning of this chapter, was when it consciously hit my brain.
Yeah. Could not agree more that it becomes so... Especially going from Virginia to Ephraim, they both have their like side jokes to themselves that they tell inside of their head, but they're different. They're like starkly different. Ephraim at one point makes a comment about art and is like making a joke about art in his head versus like Virginia's kind of insulting the intelligence of other people. Like, you know, like it is truly as though we are actually inhabiting two different characters. And I know that it's not an uncommon thing to do in literature, but it is occasional. It is not nearly as stark and as quite as well executed as it is here.
Right.
So I just want to pay tribute to that.
Exactly. Man, he's gotten so good at writing. Look how our boy has grown up.
Look at our boy. Our boy. That Piercy boy.
Piercy boy.
The dreaming picture he has of Trig as well after being sedated is just like a sad and beautiful image, a reflection of a man we barely knew again, coming back in these hot flashes to Ephraim.
Hot flashes.
Well, yeah, I wrote hot flashes and I was like, yeah, I'm sticking by it, even though PJ's going to say shit about it.
Oh, man. I don't know. It was a wonderful sight.
Mm-hmm.
A wonderful sight of Trig. But it was cut short, much like Trig was.
Ooh. It's brutal.
Both literally and in his life.
Did you hear what I said?
No.
I said it's brutal. I meant to say beautiful, but my brain, it's like it's brutal and beautiful. I don't know. Brutal. Oops.
Brutal.
Yeah, I want to read just a little bit of it here. I know I didn't have it there originally, but all I want is to float there with him, to smell the salt, to lie in the cradle as the sea rocks us to sleep. The moon pulses in the sky like an atomic dilation, drawing me up into its gravity. No. And like that also is just like such a small thing writing wise, but like removing the spaces from no gives you that kind of panicked feel again, where the tone went calm after the sedation and then all of a sudden rushed and then it cuts to hatchet face. And, you know, I just fuck. Dick, dude, what?
I think about like dreaming. I don't dream very often. But sometimes when I have like a particularly nice dream and then I'm waking up, like I definitely have that feeling of like, no, like let me go back to sleep and continue this dream.
I've had those. How nice that, by the way, that you have nice dreams whenever you dream. How fun for you.
It's not necessarily nice, but they're fun.
Well, okay. I very seldomly have good dreams, but that's probably more of a me problem, actually. We just real quickly call up my therapist in the middle of this episode and work this out so we can continue.
Yep.
But
it's me. You know it's me. Like
that I'm dreaming about you?
Hash this out here. No, the therapist.
If I'm in your dreams, PJ?
Please don't choose me as a therapist. I would be bad at it.
PJ,
I think.
PJ, if you see me in your dreams, can we just like exchange a high five and do like the woogity woogity woogity? You know,
then
like
I'll know that
power?
We're actually like not in a real world thing,
but like
we're actually physically connected somehow. But yes, I will do the Rocket League wiggity 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 with you.
Okay, rocket power. But yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, not Rocket League. Different thing entirely.
No, I totally get it. Jesus Christ, where are we going with dreams? Anyway, I don't
know.
I also like love all the different moments that are tucked in here where we get this sort of like third person view of Ephraim from his own first person perspective as he himself is having this truly like out of body experience. We're talking about dreams. This feels in the same way that a dream might, and he actually thinks that he might be dreaming and like doesn't understand. He hears a scream and then later he realizes it's his. It all kind of paints this very painful picture here for him, and I think it's only made more dramatic when he is going through his withdrawal with Pax in the room and he tries to bargain for Z to release him from these ghosts of his past and the pain registering within him. And I think that like unlike traditional PTSD, which would be kind of the sort of opposite exposure, right? It would be, you know, exposure via something happening around you or something reminding you of these things. This is a withdrawal that forces him to go back into those moments that he's buried, which is kind of the reverse, like I said. Obviously not a psychologist, but from my understanding.
Yeah. There was a comment from Pax. You asked for Z before you asked for Volga, which was like personally kind of a shot to the heart to me a little bit.
Snowball.
So it was mentioned, like he mentioned her like in his internal monologue earlier in the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think similar to probably what he was thinking, there was that comment already. So I hadn't even considered that he hadn't actually spoken her name out loud at all and just assumed that she was dead, you know, like assumed that there was nothing he could do about it. I don't know. It was just kind of heartbreaking when he was told that he never actually like asked about her.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that Pax bringing that up is, I think, interesting in two different ways. One, of course, is the sort of the shot to the heart that we get that Ephraim didn't think of that first. In fact, we know that he thought of Trig first, which logically makes some kind of sense. But then we have the internal monologue moment with about around Volga, like you said, and then kind of skips over it. But I think what's also interesting,
Volga was first. I thought Volga was like right away in the chapter.
Maybe Volga is first. I don't think that detracts from this point that I want to make here.
No, it doesn't.
Is that the fact that Pax cares about Ephraim is interesting, right? That's different. This man abducted us and then rescued us, I guess. But he cares enough to recognize about like even the story of Volga, to remember that and to bring that up and I guess not encourage, but force him to quit and kind of go clean right now in this moment. And I think that is maybe one of the more interesting parts of the story at the moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I'm trying to figure that out. I think partially it's probably because he knows that the better state that Ephraim is in, the better chance he has of getting out of here and getting back home. I don't know so maybe it's entirely selfish to keep him sharp and keep him in a good headspace and healthy physically and mentally. But I don't know.
It's fair. Good point. Okay. All right. And then the chapter ends with a gray military chant, the namesake and title of our chapter, as Ephraim is reduced back to some of the only things his brain can hang on to in this extreme bout with sobriety.
Yeah, the chants were pretty interesting. So there's the mention of a crow being obviously obsidians, but there's also the quote, "Smoke that ant." I don't recognize ant as a slang for any specific color or any group of people or anything. Is that something that was mentioned elsewhere? Is that something that we may learn later? Should I know this already?
I don't feel like it is. Okay, let's just read the quote here. Chop 'em if they're taller, stomp 'em if they're smaller, mauler, brawler, legacy hauler, smoke that crow, earn this hauler, mauler, brawler, legacy hauler, smoke that ant, pay off your collar, legio, eterna, victress. One more time, you fucking dogs, mauler, brawler, legacy hauler. My assumption would be an ant would probably be like a red or a brown, but
okay, that's fair.
Smoke that ant, pay off your collar. Yeah.
Because it's also smoke that crow, so like...
Yeah, right. My assumption would also be that it's a different color. But, you know, the Greys are obviously in charge of enforcing on all of the lower colors, so that kind of would track between Greys and Reds.
Maybe it's just ant in general, a low color.
Yeah, could be. Especially since so many kind of match up with an ant's color scheme, right, PJ? You would know.
Yeah. I mean, there are ants that are gold too, though.
Are there pink ants, PJ?
Vaguely
pink. Interesting.
More red than pink.
Chapter
orange.
Chapter 22. Ephraim Unshorn. So Unshorn opens up, and it feels as though the Ephraim that like we know really returns in real force now that he's kind of getting better. His leg is being repaired and is in fact stronger than it was previously. He's got that sarcastic wit about him, and his head is on his shoulders again. But maybe given the forced withdrawal from Zoladone that he went through Pax, he might open up, kind of like he was at the end of Iron Gold. What do you make of kind of the combination of the sort of forced cold turkey component here? What do you make of it all?
So the way I'm kind of reading this is that he doesn't really need Zoladone unless he's faced with situations where he's either isolated or has time to think about Trig, or anybody else that he's lost, when he's kind of on task or like has a goal of some sort and is actively doing something, it doesn't seem like he really needs anything and he can kind of control himself.
Yeah.
It's kind of the vibe I get.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. I'm interested in it though.
That is, I'm just trying to think through here because I think that I kind of agree with you, but I also think that part of the reason that he takes Zolodone is to prevent him from having those feelings in the first place. You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the only times he like goes through any sort of withdrawal is when he's in a situation where he's thinking about Trig or thinking about the people that he's lost or is isolated and doesn't want to deal with it. But if he's
I think that
distracted,
he always doesn't want to deal with it, though. I feel like that's my component here is that previously, because it was so accessible to him, he was just taking it all the time, though he didn't have to deal with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess...
like right now, he's acting basically normally.
Yeah.
Kind of snapped out of the withdrawal symptoms that we were sort of talking about because he has something else on his mind.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That works. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot to unpack here as far as like addiction goes, of course, but
absolutely.
That's something that we're constantly unpacking with Ephraim's character. So I love the description of the broken Olympia that we have here as well, and the little bit of history that we get about the war that raged for the past decade. I think that this is just kind of a brilliant choice on Pierce's part, by the way, to like pack in sort of the different moments without giving us, you know, full books or explanations, but just like dropping in bits about like the Block War and the Rat War and whatnot. But the Reaper and Sephi fighting against the Minotaur here and the Broken Spires, it all contributes to this like wonderful visage where Ephraim and the kids find themselves.
Yeah. There's a quote in that chunk that I found to be like striking. I just really liked this quote of the war moved on, Olympia didn't. I don't know why. That's just, it speaks to me. It's well written. It's beautiful. It's concise, and it conveys the message perfectly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that it speaks a lot to also the state of the Bologna estate, because who's going to come back? Like, the Bolognas aren't going to come back and repair it. They're all dead except for Julia, and she's on Mercury, Venus, somewhere in space. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully dead soon.
Hopefully dead soon. I have to bring this like little tiny bit up here. It's just really important that we talk about this. But there's a quote here around page 177. Cooking fires twirl from broken buildings, and I don't know if I have to say anything more. You know, the cooking fires of Olympia show that this is going to be the center point for the rest of the story, because we haven't had any other mentions of cooks for the entire book. So doesn't that mean that it's kind of the, you know?
This is the important one.
I don't know. It feels like some pretty heavy foreshadowing, right?
Feels like some pretty heavy cook activity.
Cook zone in Olympia.
The cook zone.
The cook zone. Welcome to the cook zone. Bum, bum, bum. Thunderdome music plays.
Yes.
So we're introduced to a shaman of whom we'll get to know a little bit later. We can refer to him as Osgard, of course, but as well as more of the obsidian religion. I hear that that I think is very interesting. That of like the reading of bones, as well as of the Skoogie, the elite warrior women of the obsidian caste. All shortly before Ephraim leaps out of a window, absolutely terrified of the namesake of the chapter, Valdir the Unshorn, the concubine to the queen, of whom we later know as Queen Sephi. Did you have any particular favorite reveals in the sort of casual reflection on the history of the obsidian here, or of Valdir, or of just kind of everything? There's just this is such a well executed like info dump in a lot of ways. I love it.
Yeah, all of it was super, super interesting. Like, I want more lore. I want more lore on the obsidian specifically, but the torque rings. Mm-hmm. Is it torque? Is that the right way to pronounce it?
I think it's torque. Yep.
Torque rings, melted down gold sigils that like or what they're constructed of, and the fact that they just don't bother with it, like grays from Ephraim's perspective, obviously. Like, they just don't fucking bother like melting down their sigils. It's just the golds. I don't know. It's kind of hardcore. It's pretty cool. Like making rings out of the people that you're defeating.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why I like that idea so much. And just the idea of some 7-fingered person with like 3 or 4 rings on each finger, just like, I don't know. I'm just imagining things, I guess. I don't think they mention like how many each person's wearing, but like I can imagine a bunch of rings on one finger and like adorning all of them.
I think that's one of the fantastic parts about like when a good book really like picks you up and lets you like run with your imagination can really run with it. That's a great example. You know, like you have enough of a description of the obsidian that you just get this visual image because that's the way that it is and the way that it should be. So I totally agree with you. I love it. It's great. Great point on the torque rings though. And Ephraim's new leg being, you know, better than his old leg is interesting too. Like jumping too far and kind of the funny moments of like grappling the vines. And
just imagine trying to jump when suddenly one leg is way more powerful than the other.
Like 3 times, right? I think something like that.
Yeah, 3 times more powerful. But like that leg's 3 times more powerful than his old leg was. But it's also probably 3 times more powerful than his current other leg is.
Oh, right. So like, right. He's not jumping.
Does he evenly. just like spindle off when he's trying to jump?
Spins, yeah, just in the air. It's like, what the fuck? Totally. But then, while trying to escape, Ephraim is caught by 6 griffins, mounted with Skoogie and a 7th monster unmounted, God Eater, Sephi's personal steed, before Darrow's cavalry commander steps forward and introduces his monstrous self to us. As we mentioned before, Valdir the Unshorn. He's got to be a pretty big threat for Ephraim to like just imply castration and death. You know, like he's pretty threatening to Ephraim himself in this sort of immediate moment. What feels does he give you? What'd you think of the whole catch him scene?
I mean, God Eater is such a good name,
right?
Like for anything. God Eater is so good, but obviously gives some more insight into obsidian culture. Like we mentioned in the previous question, like we're just getting a whole lot of lore on obsidians, which is sweet. I'm excited to get to know this lovely fellow even more. Based on how he speaks, though, I'm kind of surprised his voice isn't in bold like Ragnar's was, you know?
Interesting. Sure.
Like it seems like he's got a big, deep, booming voice. I don't know why. I'm also imagining him as, is it Brick? I think his name is Brick in the first Borderlands game.
Yeah, the big dude.
Yeah, the giant dude. That's who I am imagining for some reason. Just absolute tank of a person.
Fair.
And I don't know if that's the case because a lot of the obsidians are long, spindly dudes. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that most of them are described standard, but Freyhild, of course, is the one that's kind of described differently as sort of a lithe creature.
Toothless was like just long and spaghetti-limbed. Tongueless, not toothless.
I love Toothless. He's so cute. But yeah, no, totally. You're right.
Is Toothless like somebody?
He's a dragon from How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh.
He's the dragon, the black one. The cute black
dragon. I've never seen that movie.
What? Oh, that's sad. It's actually such a good movie. I'm going to get so much shit for this, but I love that movie.
I'll watch it.
It's so good.
Aren't there like 3 or 4 of them now?
There's 3. They're all pretty good. The first one's great. The second one's great. I haven't actually watched the third one. But well reviewed nonetheless, like some of the best reviewed DreamWorks movies. Anyway, I want to make mention of this too with God Eater. It's an interesting name, of course, and as you brought up, it's a fantastic name. But I find it intriguing, of course, because the Obsidians are the ones who kind of shorn off the chains and then like went and fought back against the Golds, and so God Eater feels like it almost could be Gold Eater, you know, because it was clearly killing their gods.
Like Ragnar called Darrow Godchild when he first met him.
Yeah,
talking through the radio or whatever.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like that's an easy to miss, like, small detail. But yeah, with that we move into chapter 23, Ephraim, Queen. I love the little introduction and nuggets of wisdom we get from Osgard right off the bat. He just has this, like, little comment that I love that he makes about gifts. Only a fool gives a gift when the first gift is valued so little. And there's just so many, like, different moments with him. He's great.
Yeah. I just like that he's sitting on a headless statue munching on some walnuts the whole time.
In the first section, he's referred to as a sofa. Like, he thought that he was a sofa. That's another moment of, like, Ephraim's humor where you're like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, fuck.
Yeah. Right off the bat, I like this character, so I'm excited to see where he goes.
Cool. Yeah, he's fun so far. So we move on from that to the children fighting and training amongst the obsidians, and I think that it's a wonderful scene divided between the two children and narrated and described by Osgard and sort of their status in the world. It's especially interesting when it moves from the violence of Victra, or girl, as she's referred to the careful control of Pax, or boy, and the more dangerous of the two, according to the shaman. I love the way that, like, Pax backs up and dispatches them with his eyes closed, so simply with a staff, you know, making a short mockery after losing the conventional contest by stepping out of the arena, and, like, puts a shard in the dude's neck 2 millimeters away from an artery, and there's just this...
The carotid. Like, yeah. It's gonna fucking kill him.
He's making a mockery of this whole thing, and it reminds me of, like, a certain red gold that, like, we might know a thing about or two. Like, it kind of feels...
Who would that be?
I don't know. Weird. Dude's a little dangerous.
Strange.
Weird. Strange. Yeah. What'd you make of the trading scene?
Man, it was delicious. I think it was a really interesting dichotomy, I guess, where a comparison between sort of what they're used to training and the more like they're training for actual combat and, like, what things will be like, and this is more of a game. There are rules, and break a rule and you lose the game. I think that's where that sort of I don't want to call it disrespect from Pax necessarily, but just kind of flagrant disregard for what's been happening in this game that he's joined. So steps out, but still, like, goes for the throat, literally. And like, it doesn't seem like that would be something that they would do, you know, in their training at home. He and Electra.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think that it's definitely connected with Sephi, and the way that he kind of, like, talks down to her a little bit is just so reminiscent of Virginia. In a lot of ways, after we just got to, like, go sit through her character, right? Like, it feels very much like just like that.
But I'm more saying, like, they did a lot of, like, sword training and fight training,
right?
And I'm guessing they didn't have, like, the fight's over if you step out of the ring, kind of.
Oh no, not at all. Right.
That's where I'm coming at.
More of a surrender, you know. Like, that's at the very least the picture that we got in Iron Gold, right, of sort of the duel between Electra and Pax was one of, you know, sort of surrender. It also makes you, like, revisit that duel in your head and go, like, did Pax choose to lose?
Ooh, interesting.
Huh? You know, maybe he didn't want to show off.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
I don't know about that. I'd have to go back and read it again.
Yeah, right. It's interesting when you start to get to these parts, but yeah, just want to bring that up. So I love, like, after we move on from the kids, of course, and sort of the speech that Pax gives, which is absolutely fantastic. The way that he derides Sephi just like fucking Virginia would, like, it's literally perfect. It's just like, oh, you are your mom's child for sure. I love like all the other Nagal that's exchanged with Sephi from Ephraim, and before getting to like a couple of the things that we might have missed, like namely the fact that like Ephraim's heart stopped 3 times over the course of the time from the crash until now. But she brings him up. She brings up something like really important here that I can't skip over, despite my predilection to do so because it's a difficult topic. Talk about addiction and whatnot, but she speaks directly to Ephraim about his addiction to Zolodone and the choice to face and bear that numbness. And she replies with the sort of classic line, like, life is meant to be felt, else why live? Valleys make mountains. And what did you kind of make of all of the various components from Sephi?
I thought it was... I keep using the word interesting, but I thought it was interesting that there was such a distinction in her mind between the different drugs that were brought up and what was acceptable and what wasn't. There was a certain amount of consistency to it, though. Like anything that suppressed normal feelings was condemned, and anything that seemed to enhance feelings was accepted, at least. Mm-hmm. But it sort of made me think: what do you think she would think of alcohol in general?
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like the read on alcohol, I feel like they drank previously in the other books, so she's probably okay with them. I'm pretty sure at Victra and Severa's wedding.
That might have been more of a cultural thing, though. Like,
yeah. Oh, totally. I'm not.
There are toasts and there are things happening at this wedding, and we're not doing anything. So this is a responsible time to drink.
Yeah. Again, not dissuading from your opinion. I was trying to remember times where she may have come into contact with that or had an opinion, which is also interesting because obviously Volga drinks. We know that Volga drinks from the previous book as well. So it's not as though.
That's a good point.
It's not as though it's entirely frowned upon, but she is the queen, right? So she's got a little bit more command. I'm working this out loud, so.
Yeah, but there's the berserkers,
right,
that were indoctrinated in this like rage drug, essentially. Yep. So it's not like obsidians have always been against these kind of drugs. It's just Sephi specifically, and she's imposing that will on all of the people that are following her.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I also feel like maybe that her judgment was passed maybe more directly at Ephraim, and he deflected by talking about other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
What else would he do?
Right. And so
of course he's going to deflect.
He was deflecting by like pointing to kind of like double standards, of course, right? But I think she was trying to be more specific about him because of her understanding of him. So that, I don't know if there's any way to like uniformly read that. I just think it's an interesting kind of conversation, especially like you said, how would she react to alcohol? How would she react to other things? What's the sort of consistent rule set? And like you said, I think it kind of does fall in line with, mood boosters versus depressants or numbers, num-nums.
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 I don't think you should call them num-nums. I think the Surgeon
Advil.
General will get on your ass about advertising to children.
I can't call Advil num-nums. We have a disclaimer on the front side of the podcast. It's fine. Yeah. No.
All right. Advil is now num-nums. Thanks.
That's our meme for the week. Not our meme. Instagram will actually suspend our account forever. So with that,
again,
with that, we'll move on and talk about Xenophon. I think that Xenophon is kind of an interesting introduction here, right? They're a very interesting character, I think, and one that feels very distant and kind of foreign at the moment. We get a couple more moments with them. But did you have any immediate thoughts on them as of yet?
Nothing super strong, but I'm intrigued. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm excited. To learn more, but like I feel like we really didn't.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting is sort of the description of their age, right? Like they could be 30 or 80. Like what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? And they've all got like baby faces, and definitely interesting.
Yeah. Baby faces, as in literal baby faces, like the Fear Knight?
Just like the Fear Knight. No, hopefully.
Masks?
Hopefully not like the Fear Knight.
I hope not.
Oh, fearsome.
But weirdly, I kind of hope so. That'd be interesting.
Could make it interesting. What do you make of Sephi's decision here to form the All Tribe and separate from the Republic? I know this is a massive question, but what do you make of this whole movement of the Obsidians and sort of the geopolitical change?
I felt like it was inevitable.
Yeah, you actually called this out like back in fucking Morningstar, dude.
Yeah, I did.
You did. You're like,
I absolutely believed this was going to happen the entire time. I think there was this rift between Darrow and Sephi starting in Morningstar, and like it just got worse with the Republic. And on top of everything else, with the bulk of the Obsidian, the Republic really couldn't stop them. They couldn't do anything about it if they were to do this. So I think it was inevitable. I think it was inevitable. I think it makes total sense. And I think she's really, truly doing what's best for her people. And that's not necessarily what's best for the rest of the people, but her priority is her people. So I can't necessarily fault her for doing it either.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that it logically makes sense for Sephi to have made this move, especially when she compares the sort of deaths of the society to the deaths of the Republic, and like looks at it factually and sort of the repression that they've been through no matter what, and oppression that they've been through no matter what. I think what's interesting is that Ephraim kind of points out that, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to fight against them? And it's like, no, we'll just form a sovereign nation, basically. Like, don't encroach. And I think that that's a good call, all told.
Would be interesting is if they start recruiting large groups of other colors to join them.
That could be interesting. Yeah. Do you think they would?
I think they could.
I think they're so self-sufficient because that's the way that they've always been.
They are.
You know,
that's
like
true.
On the polls, it's always just been them. Unlike a lot of the other colors who depend on other colors.
Mm-hmm.
Obsidians are more self-sufficient.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I could see them because they're self-sufficient on the poles of the countries, but they're not necessarily technologically advanced there.
Yeah.
And now that they've been living within normal society, it might be nice for them to recruit a bunch of reds to mine for them and a bunch of oranges to build things for them, and recruit the other colors to come join them, not necessarily to repay. I don't know.
She makes a comment just to your point a little bit, and to kind of give you a little bit of something here. She makes a comment about the other colors having taught them things, and so they've grown. You know, they can fix the machines, they can do other things, but the Skoogie don't have the skills that he has. They don't have the skill of a crew. They don't have the skill of state manipulation that they need. And so it's kind of like the final tool in the tool belt in some ways. This is sort of her pitch to Ephraim, you know?
Right.
So it feels like they could, but I see your point. They could also recruit colors, you know?
But that's a good point. They don't really need to.
They don't need to, but I think it would probably be helpful, to your point. Mm-hmm. I love Sephi's note on language here as well, and what Nagal doesn't have in it, and that is the word that she loves the most in common, practicality. And this is something that we know Ephraim has for sure, that Ephraim is. He has always been a practical man this whole time. And with that, Ephraim's goal comes into the clearing. He's going to train the Skoogie, the elite assassins, what he knows about leading a crew and political, manipulation, breaking into places, and all the fun shit that Ephraim knows how to do. Yeah.
I'm like morbidly excited to see what he's able to do with them.
Yeah.
More directly, though, I'm impressed with Sephi's plan. And the fact that she knows that F's position is one that's, first of all, fucked. Like, he is in a fucked position.
Yeah.
And she is so confident that, like, she's cunning and confident and ruthless, and so much so that she's willing to just let him go free if he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you going to fucking do? You're going to get chased down. You're going to die.
Someone's going to kill you.
Yeah. So, like, her being that on top of it, and that level of understanding of Ephraim's position, to not even like threaten him with imprisonment or anything else, just say like, yeah, you can go free, whatever. Like, won't help you and you'll die, or you can train these guys. It'll be fun. Do it. I don't know. I think it was incredibly, incredibly intelligent on Sephi's part.
Yeah, it's a brilliant play, and it really shows her truly as, they say, and this is kind of addressed a little bit in previous books, but quiet is a dual word in Nagal, right? It is both silent and quiet in the conventional way, but it is also wise. And this is really kind of the sort of flex of the other side of that name.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliantly done.
Yeah. Really, really cool
on her part. And then we discover that Volga and Lyria of the Horn Gang, which I loved that they're referred to as the Horn Gang, were abducted by Victra by an agent known as the Figment, who has been mentioned previously. All of a sudden, his stakes in some of the people he cares about are raised again, as they are not safe as they were at the end of Iron Gold. And so, after throwing his customary fit, he agrees to train the Skoogie in hopes to help Lyria and Volga.
So, in that dead pool from last week, I said that Lyria was dead. Does that mean I have to drink for this?
I think what we did is we kept your prediction, right? And we talked about it at the beginning of the episode. So I don't think that you have to drink yet.
Yep, that's fine.
So we'll see how it pans out. But we know that Lyria is alive. There's that answer at the very least. Mm-hmm. And we know that the Figment's real, that the Figment exists. Do you remember the reference to the Figment in Iron Gold?
The reference.
Yes.
I remember the instance where Lyria gets taken.
Okay, so the other reference was when Ephraim is sitting down, I think with the Duke of Hands, and talking about other people that are as skilled for the job, and he lists off a couple of names, and the first name is the Figment.
Ah, okay.
Yes. So
that makes sense.
Yep. Just want to bring that up. Kind of reminds me of
that's pretty cool.
The list of bounty hunters and, The Empire Strikes Back and all the bounty hunters that show up to chase him down. Feels kind of similar in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
With that, we go into chapter 24, Ephraim, Skoogie. This is like a lightning fast chapter of a page and a half, and I fucking love this whole thing. Like, it is genius. It's a military speech. It introduces everyone to humiliating Freehild, the leader of the Skoogie that we haven't really talked about too much yet, to his punchline about Spanish surrealism, and I'm going to teach you about painting. After he goes into all this like robbery shit, he's like, I'm going to teach you about the best art form that Earth ever had. And it's all fantastic. It feels like we're with Ephraim again. It feels like he's this real dude, but a bit of a different Ephraim, one that's not quite as numb, not one that's chasing the pills, and one that stands, just a little bit taller and straighter than before. All of that, of course, is knocked right the fuck down by one of the best punchlines Pierce has set up in the series. Osgard saying that after the speech, only half of them speak common.
I laughed so fucking hard the first time I read it. Even the second time, like I listened to it the second time on the audiobook, and I was still broke out in laughter. Like, God, I loved that line.
This one snuck up on me on this reread, actually. I was not prepared for it. I had totally spaced it, and I started reading it, and I'm like, really? Did I not end the reading here this week? Why didn't I end it? Like, that would have been a decent spot. And then I got into it, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's why it's so good. But yeah, it's just, yep, nice. Mm-hmm. It's great.
It was great. It was so good.
It's a good little section. So with that, chapter 25, Virginia, Oligarchs. I really adore Virginia's meeting with the Silvers here and the way that we're exposed to the machine at work behind the Republic, those that have been manufacturing all of the goods that are fueling the war, and how they've been able to keep pace with the society's arms and reserves as the former superpowers, and the way that all of this war has been constructed from the Silvers and sort of the way that they built a lot of the stuff, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really, really surprised, like pleasantly surprised with how well that meeting went and how she conducted herself through the first half of it.
Well, she was just kind of sitting there, like imagining, thinking about, like, she was listening to what Britannia Ag Krieg talk through like the list of demands and whatever else, and she's like looking at her hair and thinking about how she would use, like, was it her hair or her jaw to like shape her ice that she would put into her nightly bourbon, or what have you. And there's just so many like small things where Virginia, yes, is sitting there and listening politely, and she's handling this first half in a very political manner, but she knows what's going on. She knows the silver game that we've kind of come to recognize. mostly from Quicksilver previously, but it just feels so well done as she's just like sitting there not giving a fucking shit about what she's saying. It's just brilliant. I fucking love Virginia so much.
Yeah, she's so good. She's so good.
And we get this like small thing as well here. It's actually not small. It's significant, and obviously it impacted Lyria and is very important to kind of the way that things went on Mars and the camps and everything else. So clearly the cascading effect we felt at the beginning in Iron Gold. But the way that the Reds were cheated out of their labor upon being freed is just so hard to like factor in and deal with, and it feels like a political consequence of, you know, something simple that, you know, as Virginia herself said, she didn't see coming in terms of the contracts, that they were just going to report at losses because they had to pay for the robots that were going to go in and replace these people, and that they were going to report those as losses to screw the Reds out of money, despite still, you know, making money. Just being cheated out of this sort of generational comeuppance by Silvers and Whites writing the contracts just feels so fucking unfair.
Yeah, it's definitely fucked. What do you think would happen? Like, how do you think it would have gone if they hadn't been able to write the contracts like that?
I really think that we would have, instead of like camps, you probably would have seen cities. You would have seen like demand if people had money, right? So like you would have, as opposed to sort of the protectionist assimilation camps, you might have seen smaller. You know, I don't think that this is perfect, but if it were me writing this and it were going that direction, I would think that you would see kind of like shanty towns, and then you'd see some develop more and what have you. You'd see just a slightly higher level of quality of life. Not perfect, not what was promised, but at the very least better than what they had.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, not revolutionary by any means, and definitely still a problem to be addressed, but, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing like a breakdown of how it would have gone otherwise. Because I have a feeling that although the Reds get fucked out of this and the Whites and the Silvers profit immensely, I have a feeling the rest of society also benefits more than they would otherwise. I don't know. Bringing in that level of like all the robotics, that level of efficiency, I feel like mining would be a lot slower otherwise, and probably more expensive in the long run. So it'd be, I feel like there's a lot more complexity to it, and I don't think that the Silvers or the Whites are doing anything noble by any sense. But I'd be curious to see like an actual breakdown of how it would have gone otherwise.
Yeah,
you know,
sure, that makes sense.
Be interesting.
So, as we had kind of discussed, Britannia Krieg sitting in the middle of the room and having this discussion, a bunch of the other Silvers kind of lurking around, Quicksilver watching very carefully and kind of observing the fact that like Holiday and Virginia know exactly what's going on. They're kind of grunting at all of the various talking points to each other, and there's like subtle language that they share, which is wonderful. And she just gestures, and you know, while Virginia eats this apple, which by the way, so there's a little bit of a motif, and it's, you know, a food motif, but not a cook motif or a cooking motif. With Virginia, she, in a lot of different scenes, in a lot of different moments, she has this repeated kind of tick of sorts motif, like I said, where she'll like eat an apple while other people are talking to her about things that they feel like she should care about, when in fact she actually has sort of a more real answer, a more real grasp on the problem than the other people in the room do, and has an understanding of her own fundamental position. This is a direct comparison to when she's in the room with her father Nero in Golden Sun and kind of debating with the rest of the various houses underneath in Darrow and whatnot, not being respected in the room. Very similar mannerism behavior here from her. But I also love kind of the secret language that she has with Holiday, with like the grunts and everything, and then like indicates to take the gun from her hand. And it's an anti-tank gun, by the way, that like Holiday is just hanging on to. And she just shoulders it in the middle of the room and shoots straight through this Dawn of Hermes statue that all the Silvers are gathered around, deafening everyone. It's fucking fabulous. It shows how Virginia governs, and how like Quicksilver seemingly predicted it all, because he's very aware and is at the very least on par with her game. You know, being kind of the founder of the Sons of Ares, he's a very intelligent, kind of thinks like a gold. What do you make of this assembly of silvers, and Quicksilver's reaction, technology, the whole thing? What do you make of this scene, man?
So the silvers as a whole, I feel like they've gotten sort of complacent and lazy in their power over the Senate, because they absolutely have power over the Senate, and they're kind of coasting on that. So this was sort of a well-needed jolt. Like, Mustang ain't taking no shit
whatsoever.
No more. I think it was properly received. I don't know about well received, but I think she got her point across. You know?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Blew up a $94 billion credit statue, which could have fed a shit ton of people, but obviously, like, the silvers weren't doing. Quicksilver didn't buy that. You know, he could have given the money out of his own, heart to go help those people, but obviously wasn't. So it's an interesting kind of statement against that as well.
The value of 2 destroyers.
Yeah. Right.
It's fucking ridiculous.
Or feeding a massive portion of the population for like 48 hours, something like that. Can't remember. Months. 48 months. Jesus Christ. Which is absurd.
4 years of... I don't remember what population they were talking about, but
yeah,
a lot of people.
A lot of people. And just like that, in a chapter filled with power plays, the final moment of her starting out is just brilliant. I fucking love it. Her like calling the countdown, and walking out of the room with the 5 seconds being like, I can figure this out, and I've got half the silvers in the room because half of them are intimidated by me, and I don't need to worry about that. The other half will either figure it out and get in line or not. And sort of her power play, her monologue and everything is just fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, dude, this book is so fucking good. Like, I just have to gush about it more. I really do. Like, I have mentioned it a couple of times in the last couple of hours. God, I love it. I love this book. I'm so excited about this. So thank you for dragging me into this. But
it only took a year.
Specifically, me getting to this point and bringing me to this book. Like, I really, really appreciate you for it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man, I always had a dream of getting to this point, so, this is a good moment in every way. Couldn't agree more. So
it's wonderful.
With that, we're done for the week. I guess we're going to talk about something that's in the chapter instead of your predictions, because you wanted to bring it up. But it's time for your predictions. So we'll start off with the first one. Next week, we will begin to start to feed in some of the listener predictions, questions that you guys have asked. I've been keeping them and collecting them. If you have more, please email them to me at wordsandwhiskeyshow@gmail.com. Send them to me on Instagram. Send them to me on Twitter. If you're in our Discord, either message me directly or put them in the no PJ zone. And I will figure out mostly where they belong. If you have page numbers, shit like that, that's helpful. Let us know. Let us know. We got some on Reddit, too, randomly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Feel free to message me there as well. MSI_Dandelo. I should really get a different tag, but...
Yeah, you should probably get one for our show.
Probably for the show. Yeah, probably. It's probably a good idea. So, with that, what mess has the goblin created?
So this is coming from the last line of this chapter. It says, to Sunhall. Looks like the goblin has made a new mess. And I think that mess is... I think he's launched a small war vessel with some of his loyal Howlers to collect the children himself without the help or aid of the Republic.
Oh, wow.
Like, I think he's taking shit into his own hands, and he's just going to go.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
They're gonna have to try to stop him.
I like that. So next prediction: do Pax and Electra help Ephraim train the Squigglies? In your own words.
No, what a stupid question. Like, why would you ask that? They're the most important children in the galaxy, and if they die or get hurt, Ephraim is fucked.
So no way they help.
No.
Okay. Cool.
They might help. I don't think Ephraim will ask them to help.
Okay.
They might jump in on their own, but I don't think Ephraim will ask them to help.
Okay. All right. I dig that. So, again, in your own words, does Miss Horsey Lady receive any backlash from shooting an aircraft gun through a multi-billion credit art piece?
I think they'll just kind of let it go. Quicksilver will probably make like a snide joke about it at some point, but no, I don't think she'll get any backlash other than that.
All right. Miss Horsey Lady will walk or clomp.
Miss Horsey Lady's going to walk. She'll trot.
Fuck. All right. Sweet. Well, that is all of the predictions for this week going into next week. Next week, we are going to be covering chapters 26 through 31. 26 through 31. So it's through page 267. Very, very excited for next week.
267 in the hardcover specifically.
Hardcovers, yes. Yeah. So solid little read. 62 pages. Should be great. Very excited for next week. Very excited for the rest of this book, to be honest. So
we get to record this in 3 days.
3 days. 3 days to read those 62 pages. You can do it.
Yeah, I can do it. It's fine.
So that's where we'll leave you for this week.
Thank you, as always, to our producers, Tim and Andrew, for helping us keep our show's lights on. Check out the links in the show notes. You can find our schedule, Patreon, previous episodes, websites, drinks, socials, all in one convenient spot.
Yeah, and as PJ said, make sure that you check out the Patreon. We have a ton of new content coming out there each and every week. We do Devil's Cuts occasionally of our episodes on the main feed here with bonus content, where either we talk about things beforehand or stuff that we had to cut just for time and kind of simplicity's sake. Sometimes some extra funny stuff, and soon a bonus book, an entire bonus book series, the very first book that we covered. So it should be a good time for our patrons. Above and beyond that, we've got the 3 other shows: your show, PJ Symposium, that we talked at the top, Hardpan, which we mentioned in the middle, and Speculative Knowledge, which we didn't talk about at all. But those are the 3 shows that we've got in addition here. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, we also want to take a second to thank our new patron, mixologist Adam Moldy. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining us in the Patreon. We hope that you appreciate all of our live shows and everything like that. Very excited to have you.
Absolutely. It means the world to us. Any support that we get, be it just listeners specifically like you, because you're listening to this, so you're a listener. Just the fact that you're listening to us and downloading our show, it really helps us out. What helps us out even more is consistency and reviews. So if you're into that, give it a shot.
If you can, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd love you.
Yep. Anyway,
love you a long time.
Love you long time. We'll see you next week.
Bye.